a lot of abandoned places, but there's one that stuck with me more than any other. An abandoned middle school on the east side of Detroit. The building had been shut down since the early 2000s, but when I pulled up, it looked like it had been decaying for decades. Windows smashed out, the brick walls tagged with graffiti, the old sign out front still clinging to its last letters. The second I stepped inside, the air hit me. Damp, moldy, mixed with that weird sour smell that only comes from buildings left to rot. My flashlight beam swept across rows of lockers, most of them pried open, a few with crayon drawings still taped to the inside. It was strange. The place felt frozen in time. Desks still lined up in classrooms, textbooks scattered across the floor, a chalkboard in one room with math problems half erased like class had just ended one day and never resumed. But what really set me on edge were the sounds. Abandoned schools are supposed to be silent, but I kept hearing things. A desk creaking in a room I hadn't stepped into yet. The faint slam of a locker down the hall. I told myself it was the building settling. Rats. The wind. Anything but what it really sounded like. Kids. At one point, I walked into a gymnasium. My flashlight barely cut through the dark, but I could make out the basketball hoops hanging by rusted chains. That's when I heard it. The bounce of a ball. Once. Twice. Then nothing. The sound came from the far end of the court, but when I swung my light, there was nothing there. Just peeling paint and a collapsed set of bleachers. I should have left then, but curiosity always gets the better of me. I went deeper, into the basement. The stairs creaked with every step. The air got colder, heavy, like it didn't want me down there. My beam landed on an old boiler, pipes dripping water onto the cracked floor. That's when I heard whispering. Faint, overlapping voices, like a classroom full of kids murmuring at once. I followed it down a hall lined with lockers until I reached a room at the very end. The door was half open. I pushed it. Inside, the walls were covered with drawings. Not graffiti, not scribbles, but children's drawings. Crude crayon sketches of stick figures. Dozens of them, all standing in a row. Every single one had black, hollow eyes. I froze, and that's when I noticed something worse. In the far corner, against the wall, was a chair, and on it, a figure. At first, I thought it was a mannequin, but then its head jerked toward me. Its face, pale, sunken, eyes completely black, just like the drawings. I stumbled back, my flashlight shaking in my hands. The whispers grew louder, filling the room, filling my head until I thought my skull would crack. The figure stood. Its movements were wrong, jerky, like a puppet on strings. And as it started toward me, the drawings on the walls seemed to shift, the stick figures bending, turning, all of them now facing me. I bolted. Sprinting up the stairs, through the halls, past the gym, I didn't look back. The whole time, I could hear footsteps behind me. Not one set, but many. Dozens, like an entire crowd giving chase. When I finally burst out the doors into the night, I didn't stop running until I was back in my car. From the outside, the school was silent again. Empty. But in the distance, from deep inside, I swore I heard it. The faint echo of children laughing. I've always loved urban exploring. Old factories, abandoned houses, forgotten buildings swallowed up by weeds and time. There's something about them that makes you feel like you're stepping into a place that doesn't want to be remembered. So when my buddy Kevin told me about an abandoned hospital just outside of town, I couldn't resist. It had been shut down for decades. Rumors swirled, illegal experiments, shady disappearances, patients locked away and forgotten. Of course, none of that was confirmed, but that's the thing with places like that. The mystery is half the fun. We went late at night, like idiots. Just a couple of flashlights, backpacks, and phones to record the whole thing. The moment we stepped inside, the air felt heavy, like the whole building was holding its breath. Paint peeled off the walls in long strips. Rust covered everything metal. Old wheelchairs sat abandoned in the corners, as if the patients had just gotten up and walked away mid-treatment. We split up. Kevin went toward the old surgical wing while I headed upstairs. The stairwell echoed with every step I took. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, dust dancing in the air. I passed by old patient rooms, some with the doors still hanging open, others sealed shut with rusted locks. One room stopped me cold. The door was cracked open, and I swear I saw movement inside. Just a quick shift of shadow, like someone had ducked out of view. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I pushed the door open with the end of my flashlight, half expecting a raccoon or some junkie squatting. But the room was empty, except for the bed. The mattress was torn apart, springs sticking out like bones, but what caught my eye was the straps. Leather restraints, all four corners. And the leather wasn't old and cracked like everything else in the building. It looked new, like it had been used. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I turned to leave, but froze. The door I had just pushed open was closed. I hadn't heard it move. And on the other side of it, I could hear footsteps. Like someone didn't want me to know they were there. I held my breath, gripping my flashlight like a weapon, waiting for the door to swing open. It never did. When I finally worked up the nerve, I yanked it open myself. The hallway was empty, but there were fresh wet footprints on the floor, bare feet, leading down the hall. I followed them, my hands shaking. They turned a corner, then another, until I ended up in a part of the hospital I didn't even realize I'd entered. The walls were different here, cleaner, less decayed, almost preserved. That's when I realized I wasn't hearing my own footsteps anymore. I spun around, my flashlight beam landing on a figure at the end of the hallway. It was a patient gown, someone standing perfectly still, their head tilted at an unnatural angle, long dark hair covering their face. My light flickered, and in the split second of darkness, they were closer. I screamed for Kevin, my voice echoing down the corridors. I bolted, not even caring which way I went, just running blind through the endless maze of halls. Every time my flashlight blinked back on, the figure was closer, always standing, never walking, just appearing, like the hospital itself was bending around me. I finally burst into the lobby, gasping, heart racing out of my chest. Kevin was already there, pale as a ghost. I didn't even ask what he saw, because when we ran out into the night air, sprinted back to the car, and drove off, he didn't say a word. Neither of us ever went back. But I can tell you this, when I looked through my phone the next day, at the video I had been recording the entire time, there were moments where I could see it. The patient, standing just behind me, closer than I ever realized. Detroit has no shortage of abandoned places, but there's one factory on Jefferson Street that people warn you about. Not because of security, not because of cops, but because people who go in sometimes don't come back out. Of course, I thought it was just another urban legend. I was wrong. The place was enormous, a decaying skeleton of what used to be a car parts plant. I went in through a broken side door, my flashlight beam cutting through the dust and broken glass. The air was suffocating, thick with mold and the stink of old oil. Inside, everything felt wrong. The deeper I went, the more it seemed like the building was swallowing sound. My footsteps didn't echo like they should have. It felt like the walls were smothering every noise. I made it to the second floor. The rooms up there were lined with rusted machinery, conveyor belts snapped and hanging like broken bones. That's when I saw it. A mattress in the corner. It wasn't old. The blanket on top of it was dirty, but fresh enough to have been used recently. Around it, I saw piles of food wrappers, empty water bottles, and cigarette butts. Someone was living there. Before I could back out, I heard something scrape across the concrete floor behind me. I spun with the flashlight. Nothing. Then came the smell. Coppery, sharp. The smell of blood. My heart pounded as I tried to leave, but the stairwell I came up from was dark. Darker than it should have been. My flashlight flickered, and for a second, I thought I saw someone standing just at the bottom of the stairs. Tall, still, watching. I blinked, and they were gone. I pushed myself down another hallway, praying for another exit. That's when I found the room. The walls were covered in scratches. Not graffiti, not paint, just long, desperate gouges in the concrete, as if someone had clawed at it with broken fingernails. And in the middle of the room, a chair. Straps tied to the arms. Stained dark with something I didn't want to think about. I tried to tell myself it was left behind from years ago, some junk left to rot. But when I stepped closer, I noticed something fresh. A puddle. Still wet. Still red. That's when I heard breathing. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the shadows in the corner. I froze. My flashlight trembled in my hands, a beam sliding toward the sound. And that's when I saw him. A man, if you could call him that. Skin pale, clothes filthy, his eyes sunken and wild. He was crouched low, like an animal, one hand dragging something metallic along the floor. A wrench. When my light hit him, he smiled. I didn't wait. I bolted, sprinting down the hall as his footsteps thundered after me. He didn't yell, didn't say a word, just ran. Fast. I don't know how I made it out. I don't remember which turns I took. I just remember bursting out a broken doorway into the night, lungs burning, legs numb. I didn't stop until I reached my car, and even then, I sat there for 20 minutes, shaking so hard, I couldn't put the key in the ignition. I told myself it was just some homeless squatter, someone protecting his turf. But the more I replay it in my head, the less I believed that. Because when I looked back, just before I escaped, he wasn't chasing me anymore. He was just standing there in the doorway, watching and smiling, like he knew I'd be back someday.